Hello, welcome back, or welcome if you are new, to my booktube channel, Goddess of Gore. My name is Vix and I like to talk about horror, thriller, sometimes fantasy and occasionally sci-fi books every week. Today I want to talk about the books I read for my Horror Mayhem 2022, what I thought of them and would I recommend them. I read one book for each of the prompts, so this shouldn't take too long, but regardless, let's get on with it. So a quick recap, what was Horror Mayhem? It was a month-long read-a-thon created by the Bookish Bryans, and I'll link their channel below, with a new subgenre of horror books each week, and you could choose as many or as few as you wanted to read each week, just with the prerequisite that they should be short. I think under 200 pages was the offer, but the Bryans did say this wasn't a rule, just an idea. They had many hosts on their YouTube and had author interviews running all month long. I think it was a lot of fun for everyone involved and to watch. So what did I read? For week one, the prompt was creatures or supernatural beings, and I chose creatures and read Slugs by Shaun Hutson. And this book in particular was my very first real introduction to adult horror way back in the distant dark days of the past. And I was very much looking forward to a reread to see if it still held up to my rose-tinted romantic memories, and I am pleased to say it did. There was a couple of word choices that dated the book, as old books tend to, but apart from that, it was thoroughly enjoyable. Lots of squishy, squashy slugs, lots of mucus, lots of long drawn out slow deaths, and lots of Iron Maiden references. I couldn't not read it with a smile on my face. I was honestly taken back to a diesel fumed double-decker bus with my embassy number ones and a Walkman going to school through the whole book, and for that I am immensely happy. So, it begins in a dark, damp cellar with a mutated slug. Does it explain how the slug came to be? Does it have to? If it did, I can't remember, and I deem it not relevant. They go on a killing spree throughout the entire neighbourhood in a small town, and it's up to Mike Brady, the council health inspector, to investigate. Now, you may think that slugs can't move very fast and a bit of salt will sort them right out. Wrong. Cue Foley, long-haired Iron Maiden t-shirt wearing cool dude scientists in the museum. Are you in charge, they ask. Yeah, they let me run the show at weekends and it's Saturday, man. Well, him and the other two men, Mike and Don Palmer, the council sewage expert, obviously, saved the day and put an end to all those people caught mid-coitus from being eaten alive. There is a truly magnificent scene that involves a working lunch that I urge you to read. Fabulous, very 1980s horror from Shaun Hutson. Week 2 was Gothic horror, and to me Gothic horror is dark, melodramatic, flowery words. I always imagine a flouncy silk shirt with tight cuffs and minute million buttons when I think of Gothic horror. And for this I chose Carmilla by Sheridan and LeFanu, published in 1872. I didn't think I had read this book, but as I was going along, I was just struck by everything being too familiar. I certainly had, because I knew the plot. So, considering it was written 200 years ago, and that's not when I read it the first time round, this wasn't hard to read at all. There is a lot of long drawn out explanations, and the speech is very much not the way we talk today, but everything else was just fine, and I did enjoy it very much. It follows a young girl named Laura who lives with her father in Germany, all alone and desperately wants company. after being told by letter that a family friend, the General, and his niece wouldn't be visiting due to her unexpected death, she gets a bit upset. But that soon changes when a carriage is upturned on the road outside and the young girl inside the carriage is injured. Her mother is very anxious to be on her way, but can see her daughter is in need of medical attention, and therefore Laura's father steps up to house Carmilla whilst she recovers. Laura recognises Carmilla as a girl who she had once dreamt of as a 6-year-old, and even more bewilderingly, Carmilla also had the same dream. During the course of the book, we find out that a bug or virus has been spreading through the nearby towns and causing the deaths of young women and girls, who get weaker and weaker until they die. And Laura later seems to be coming down with the same symptoms, vivid nightmares of being attacked by a cat-like beast in her bed. And the tail end of the book becomes a bit of a Sherlock Holmes mystery. With the introduction of the General, he turns up to the family home with details of what happened to his niece after she met a young woman and her mother at a ball. This was another fantastic book, and if you're put off by the age of the book, I urge you not to be. It didn't take long at all to get over the language. The supposed sapphic themes in the book are very, very subtle, and to me were only obvious because I knew they were there, if again that's normally something you don't like to read about. This isn't exactly Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. Week 3 saw the turn of cosmic horror, and I don't read cosmic horror. Well, not on purpose anyway. And cosmic horror books are in essence books that explore the insignificance of humans in comparison to the vast universe, and generally have a curiosity or unknowable theme to the reader and the protagonist. And to me, I think of the seasons in Supernatural, the TV show, set in the Men of Letters bunker. I don't claim to know any cosmic horror by any means, so please don't come at me for that explanation. I read the Ballad of Black Tom for this, and when I did pick it, I wasn't sure if it would fit the bill of cosmic horror, and now having read it, I would say that it does. It follows a young black man called Thomas Tester who lives with his dying father in a rundown apartment in Harlem in the 1920s. He's a street musician, but also a bit of a hustler and procurer of occult texts for rich white folk on the more affluent sides of town. But when he meets a millionaire, Robert Soynam, who has heard of his ability to find things, he employs him into a scheme involving the Supreme Alphabet, a retelling of H.P. Lovecraft's The Horror at Red Hook. It has the same characters such as Detective Malone and Soynam, but I think the story is slightly different. Given that I do not particularly enjoy cosmic horror, in that I do not seek this out in books or films, I did enjoy this book. I think Victor is a fabulous writer and I will be reading more from him. And I think I will read The Changeling later in the year. I can't say too much about the book other than Tommy Tester is a brilliant character who takes a turn I did not foresee. And being 150 pages, this is a very easy book to read if you want to see what modern writers of cosmic horror have to offer, or love Lovecraft and want to see what his retellings are like. So, 3 weeks of subgenres of horror down, with some absolutely stunning examples of short stories, and this was one of my favourites. I was building up to the pièce de résistance, the outstanding and very vast folk horror genre. I adore folk horror movies, and I like occult and pagan rites being involved, as well as local urban legends and world mythology. Cults, small towns, you know the thing. So, a definition of folk horror is usually rural settings, isolation, the power of nature and local folklores. And for this week I chose Ritual by David Pinner, and this was the book that inspired the well-loved classic The Wicker Man, directed by Robin Hardy, who later wrote a book of the film. This book took me the longest to finish. I would like to say it was rubbish, and yes, it was. And there was also a lot of interesting things in it. It was mostly about David, a man he later introduced himself as a policeman, who was given the runaround by a load of school children, teased sexually by a young girl, I'm pretty sure she was described as being 14, while investigating a murder of a child in the village. He was brought in after an anonymous tip-off, and a couple of men who were either a gay couple or not, but either way David deemed them as criminals for their behaviour. I should say that David was a Christian and treated the locals in the Cornish village as heathens for not going to church, although some of the families were Christians and went to church. I did enjoy parts of the book, but most of it was just waffle and nonsense, and it did take a while for it to become recognisable as the inspiration to The Wicker Man. There were a couple of parts that were good. I'm glad I read it though, and I am now intrigued to see what the Robin Hardy novel has to offer. So in essence, my most look forward to subgenre was the worst book choice for me, and I can't say I wasn't warned. Literally everyone I spoke to about this book said it was dire, it was pretty poor, and I should pick something else, but honestly, I'm not who I am today by listening to advice from wise people. So, overall, I had a fabulous time during Horror Mayhem, and 3 books out of 4 being 4 and 5-star winners, and I am looking forward to the Mayhem's return in 2023, where I imagine it will be bigger and better, and I will probably give up the entire month to the prompts and only short stories. So if you want to get involved next year, go and mark your calendars for May 2023. Until next time, bye bye.